All right, everybody. Welcome to EMS Office Hours. I am Jim Hoffman, as always, and this is sort of a special sort of Sunday morning um, episode that we're doing here. And I have some of you might know Adam Roth. If you follow me and you work with me, I'm sure you might know Adam. Recall Adam from back in the Brooklyn days. And we're also joined by Patti, and they both have a podcast of their own called the Security Cocktail Hour. I don't get to partake in the cocktail because it's morning, but I guess Joe has said maybe we'll do the hangover edition
Yeah,
of the show.
coffee, right?
You know, guys, one of you at least just kind of talk about what your podcast's about and what you're doing. I know it's not, Adam is not directly related to EMS anymore, but I think today's show, talking to some people that emailed me uh, before the show, talked about how this is kind of really important because it does reflect a lot of things that we do as EMS providers. So, why don't you guys just give a quick overview before we proceed?
Sure. Thanks, Jim. Hi, everyone. I'm Patti, and the security cocktail hour. It's like it sounds. We drink and we talk about security. Today it's coffee because it's Sunday morning here in the East Coast. But Adam and I, besides Adam's storied career in EMS, he's been a cybersecurity professional for quite a while, and so have I. So we have done just about everything in cybersecurity. And so on the show, we just talk about it. And, there are a million shows about guys telling you how to hack and a lot of technical stuff. But we kind of try to demystify it, or for people who aren't in the real, in the field and know what all the terms are. And, we basically have a conversation where, like we say, if you go to a cocktail hour or a wedding or something and you run into someone who says they do cybersecurity, you might say, I read this thing in the paper, or can you tell me about what this is? And you end up having a good conversation. So we try to go for that vibe, and we're trying to bring it here. So thanks a lot for having us on, Jim. I was really excited to do this because it never occurred to me to talk about EMS, but then when I started talking to Adam and you're like, well, yeah, you have a lot of technology that you use, and you do handle a lot of people's personal data, and under a stressful situation. I'm like, that's really interesting.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm glad to be here.
One thing I want to just read you one of the comments that I got, and they talk about how they had a server crash. They were either hacked or something like that. This is an EMS agency, and they were down for like weeks because of it. They didn't have any servers. They couldn't get to the forms you fill out every day. The check off sheets and stuff like that. And it's interesting because that's sort of like an internal thing for that agency, right? But it ends up reflecting on the community that they're serving, right? Because now they can't serve the community like they're supposed to because the system went down. I'm not sure what kind of protection they had in place. I imagine most places have some sort of security in place. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that a lot of agencies have enough in place to protect them?
Well, I'm going to jump in here. Let's talk about a really terrible thing. Let's talk about ransomware, and I'll explain why I'm bringing that up. When hospitals or organizations get subjected to ransomware, they no longer have availability and they're down.
Mm-hmm.
What you're talking about more is what it seems like an IT-related issue. When I mean IT-related issue, it means high availability. When Joe and I discuss things about cybersecurity, we talk about how to make things highly available when we do have issues, whether there's ransomware, whether there's some kind of hacking, the denial of service, which means somebody's trying to take down your equipment. Well, an EMS agency or any organization, within their budget, right? Budgets can be very small. Not every organization has large budgets.
Oh, yeah.
But you should find a way to make your servers or your services highly available. And that's also subjected to the SLA, or service level agreement, of what you have with your provider and or customers. So that might be a lot of technical mishmash, but what I'm getting at is, if you have a physical server, it's probably time to go into the cloud. And if you're in the cloud, it's probably time to have multiple locations that if one server goes down, it fails over to another server. And this is also practical when you have some kind of cyber attack. Joe, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things to keep in mind, and this has been a big trend in cybersecurity for the past 10 years. It used to be very much focused on just prevention. You want to prevent the attack. And the same thing with, server crashes, whatever. You want to make sure it doesn't happen. And it was a catastrophic things were a fairly rare occurrence, believe it or not. But that's changed completely. Now you see all the attacks in the newspaper, everything in the news, all these things happening, even big organizations getting hit. And so a lot of the field of cybersecurity has not so much shifted. We still have to do all the prevention and all the detection and everything, but now things are very much, we're in the age of recovery and response also. And I think that not to point any fingers or anything, but agencies, organizations are finding that you need to be able to plan for the situation where something bad will happen, that you're able to react to it, and also that you're able to recover from it. And one of the really interesting things is that, just to show you how much security evolves, ransomware originally was encrypt all your files, and then pay a ransom to get the key to decrypt them. Then it became, because people weren't paying enough, the bad guys get creative. They say, well, we're going to encrypt all your files, charge you for the key, but also if you don't pay, we're going to send it out publicly to embarrass you. And the interesting thing that's happened is that in the past year or two, there's the larger organizations. People have gotten so good at the recovery aspect to it that the bad guys have, stopped. Many of them have stopped bothering with the encryption. They're just stealing the data because they know they can get money for the data. So it just, I guess it shows the importance of, being prepared and having recovery, but then also saying, the bad guys are always innovating, and that's not even the end
Yeah.
of it.
That's funny you say that. Like, they just get the data and then they turn around and use that. They don't need to go that deep, right? They don't have to hack the entire system and shut you down. They can just get enough just to get in and get the data and then use that. I mean, you see that a lot. You get the warnings all the time. Your password might have been compromised. It show up on a list someplace, and that it might be compromised on these XYZ websites. I know years ago, I had a website that was sort of like a news feed for EMS, and it got hacked. And I went on there to like update some stuff, and like a Turkish flag showed up, and it says you've been hacked. And I was like, holy shit, how the hell this happened? And luckily the guy just was trying to teach me a lesson that my stuff wasn't secure enough, and he gave me back control of it. I wouldn't pay him shit anyway. I wasn't, it was just a kind of fun website. But just like when I saw that, and I know my other websites that I had that were important to me, I went and changed my server, and like Adam said, put stuff in the cloud, and try to make it as secure as possible. So I think that's really is key for that. Something I want to mention that it's kind of directly related to EMS is when we are in the back of the ambulance and we're asking patients and family members, even like in the home, and now most agencies have the e-charts are on a laptop or a tough book or whatever, and they ask very private questions. What's your social security number? What's your date of birth? Let me have your insurance card and this. And I remember, people would be very hesitant to give me a lot of this information, right? Like, who the hell am I? They just met me. I show up and there's box with lights on it, and I'm asking all these very personal, private questions that can, compromise their personal information anywhere. And back then, I'm like, just give me the information. Stop breaking my chops. Just give me your social security number. Just give me I need it. I need it for the form, And now that I think about like how far we've come with that, I think about how it really is important, I think, for the general public to even to understand that this stuff is secure when they give it to us, and I don't think EMS agencies as a whole don't really convey to the public how secure their information is when they're providing it, to the people that respond to them.
I'm gonna drop a bomb here, and I probably shouldn't be doing this, but I'm always under the belief that any information that you give, any PII, which is personal identifiable information, can be compromised at any time. Nothing is ever 100% secure. So when you're given that information, when they're giving your social security number, when you're giving your date of birth, your mother's your maiden name and stuff,
Right.
I always believe that somebody can compromise that instantly. And I'm not going to go into the tactics and techniques and how people do it. And to be honest with you, now being in cybersecurity, but back then being an EMT in the back of a bus, knowing I'm asking these questions, I would probably be a little bit horrified asking the questions, kind of like the way you would feel.
Right.
But at the same time, what even bothers me more is we're in the back of a bus, an ambulance, and we're asking these questions, and meanwhile the cop's standing next to me, or somebody else standing next to me might be getting that information and using it. But yeah, it's secure if you have a good a good tablet and everything's encrypted and it's going over cellular, right?
Mhm.
And you have a good encryption point to point. Yeah, it's probably secure. But what happens when that server, which is going to, right, even the virtual server, it has some kind of vulnerability, and we call them also 0 days. And what a 0 day is a vulnerability that nobody knows about except someone discovered it and is going to use it to compromise that server. And if that server, that computer, is not up to date with its patches, and every week there's another vulnerability, if you're not maintaining those patches, and by the way, people purposely don't maintain patches instantly because they want to test it in their environment first, there is that possibility of that machine or that server getting compromised. So, yeah, best effort is great, but we have to also be very careful, and our agencies and our organizations and our IT people must be on top of things.
Yeah, I guess that's the key, right? Is to make sure that you keep updating, things and patching things when you find those vulnerabilities, in the programs or on the server or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you guys, do you have like a way that is it just a standard, I guess, industry procedure for people to do that, or does every software, every server, every place have like a different method of going about it? Like in the EMS, we've got ABC, CAB, whatever. Do you guys have sort of that like checklist, or sort of have that sort of standard way of updating things and making sure that they're secure, so that you don't miss anything?
It's interesting, and for this audience, I guess I have to give a little bit of perspective. If you go online and look at things there, in information security, there are standards, there are best practices,
Mhm.
whatever that means. There are things that we all do, and that, yeah, that's a little bit of an inside joke in the industry. But ultimately, I mean, I can tell you that the things that are done in security and the ways of taking care of things, and even the way systems and organizations and security groups are audited, in my opinion, we have that and we do that, but it is nowhere near as stringent and as structured than it is in healthcare and as it is in emergency services. So when I say, yes, there are procedures, yes, there are standards, yes, there are protocols to follow, I'll be honest, they're not like yours. They're quite a bit less specific and less structured, and they're fairly difficult and sometimes expensive to implement.
I think
And
like Adam was saying, that's a big factor, right? But especially EMS agencies, the budgets aren't always there to get the best program or the best people to go and secure that stuff.
I'll give you an example, but before I give you the example, think about MGM, right? MGM, billions of dollars, brings in billions of dollars in revenue, and they got compromised. And they put a lot of money into their budgets,
Right.
a lot of money into their security because they want to bring in revenue, and they still get compromised. And you look every single day that some other organization has gotten compromised, and they are usually enterprise organization in the tens of millions of dollars. We're not talking about mom and pops, but let's talk about like that small EMS agency or that hospital that has that server there, and that server is I don't know, 2000 whatever, 2012, and it's 2024 now, and they have a proprietary application on there, and they have to have someone rewrite that application, or it's a 2016 server, and that server is no longer being updated by Microsoft. Well, let's be even more realistic. How many people in this audience or people watching this show know whether or not their Windows machine, sorry, Joe, I'm not going to talk about Macs, their Windows machine has gotten the latest Windows updates?
And
How
their
many people can say
iPhones.
that? And their phones, yeah.
You see people use their phones now too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really that simple. And then we talk about things like MFA or multi-factor authentication. Does that organization force or require somebody using their phone or their tablet to use MFA? Do they use a password and a username and maybe a biometric? Oh, we don't want to use biometrics because then it brings other things into it, and no one wants to have their fingerprints or their retina or anything else used, right? So it gets to be very complicated. You gotta balance security, but you have to also balance how difficult will it be to implement and maintain.
It's funny, you talk like Joe, you talk about iPhone updates. I know, like, I'm resistant to update my iPhone software. When it comes on, I'm always like, I would kind of wait a few weeks before I let it do it, because I always feel there's bugs and I don't want to download it, and then my apps aren't working with it. Like, the apps that I haven't caught up to the update yet, and so I kind of can see some people hesitate to update to the latest stuff because of that fear of other things they have not working with it. I wonder, talking about the tablets and stuff, if agencies should have like a little like business card or something to hand patients or family that explain that the information they give is encrypted, point to point or whatever, and kind of explain to them that we will be asking some sensitive information, your medications, your medical history, and it's, rest assured that it's secure. You know what I mean? But does that in turn end up being a liability if they say, yeah, it's secure, and then it gets, their server gets hacked and they get patient information?
Well, I think the real issue here, ultimately, and this is across many industries, especially yours, is trust. And I think that your EMS providers, they have a lot of, over decades, whatever, you have a lot of trust. You trust that you're going to get good care. You trust that the people are responsible, everything. And I think it used to be maybe that trust was extended to a lot of other things. On the business side of the organizational side, maybe including security. But I think that the challenge that you have, and this applies to many organizations, I think what's happened though is that there have been so many hacks, and people have seen, so many, even like Adam is saying, major corporations with a lot of money getting hacked. At this point, everybody has gotten, I think, at least a couple notices that says, we lost your data, we're very sorry. My wife just got one a couple weeks ago from the hospital, who said one of their providers, was hacked, and her information is out there. So it's a tough battle, because people are, I don't want to say becoming cynical, but they're becoming more attuned to the reality of how difficult it is for places to do this. And yeah, I think finding ways to do some outreach and to try to maintain that trust will be helpful for you in the long run. I mean, I don't think I can tell you from my own case that no one's going to say go away because I don't trust you. I mean, we called an ambulance for my mom, and she was, very, very ill, and the police, it was actually the cop who came in, and he goes, to enter the house, I got my body camera on. I'm like, well, what am I going to say? No, because he was bringing a spare oxygen tank for her. So, for the immediate thing, I don't think it's a big deal. But in the long term, you need to work on people's general thinking, I think, kind of as an industry.
And that's an interesting point, Joe, you bring up, right? And I want to be very careful with the whole body cam thing. But, when you're given PHI or personal identifiable health information, and you're giving date of birth, now it's recorded. You got to be very careful. That gets subpoenaed. Somebody gets to look at it. Who's looking at it? What's the custody of that information. And then the other thing that people don't really talk about is the physical security of your devices. And it really depends on what the attack is or what the hack is, right? If somebody wants to get information about somebody, and this is a targeted event, what do? Do I break into the ambulance or break into the bus, and then I get access to the terminal, and then I try to reverse engineer or hack that terminal in order to get into that, provider's information? So there's so many different aspects and so many different scenarios of where we go and what we have to prevent and what we have to provide. There's no one way to prevent it. But the other thing I wanted to bring up is, you talk about handing out a card, right? So most enterprise organizations that worry about a breach also have attorneys on standby that will handle that breach or that cyber attack. And when you go to hand out a card, you have to go to your attorney and say, hey, is this okay that we hand this out? Are we providing a false sense of expectation? Are we entering into a contract by handing out this card that their information is safe? Because when it gets breached, did we violate that contract? So litigation and attorneys is also part of the whole cybersecurity world. And let me drop this bomb: cyber insurance. Joe will love to tell you about cyber insurance because Joe handled that more than me. Getting cyber insurance or E&O, errors and omissions, and everything else is so hard these days that you might not be insurable. So that's another whole world in itself.
It's I see the commercials all the time for the the LifeLock and the home title defense stuff and whatever, and I'm like, who the hell is hacking into stuff, and how are they doing that when there's so many layers of information that you need in order to hack into someone's home title? I mean, you buy a house, and how many things you got to sign off and get notarized and all that stuff. And I'm like, how who's out there doing that, trying to get titles from people's homes, and it's funny because, like you said, it's like it's like how much guarantee can companies like that make that it's never going to happen? Because, like you said, everything's always changing, right? And by saying you're gonna be that person that protects the information, how guaranteed can that be, right? Because it's something's always changing. There's always somebody else out there doing it. I mean, my Apple freaking account got hacked one time, and I started getting charges for apps I never bought. You know what I mean? So it's just, and you think that it's secure. You get the fancy password, you get the security thing. I have a Mac, and I use a security thing on my Mac anyway. Even though I say Mac is, you can't get hacked, but I still use it anyhow. I do the MFA stuff a lot with the websites. So it's my own website, but I have it for me to get in myself. I have that. You know what I mean? So there's things that you can do, but there's no 100% guarantee for any of it.
Well, there's a lot you can do, and there's a lot you can do that's in your control. Ultimately, a lot of the issue is that when you're giving this data to someone else, when you're giving it away to whoever you're doing business with, whoever it is, whether they're in healthcare or finance or whatever, you're trusting them with it. And many of these hacks that you see are not coming from people breaking into your machine or getting just into your account, because the bad guys, they want to get thousands and millions of accounts at a time. So again, it's the trust in the organizations that's really important. And I suppose, and talk about giving a card to someone, giving some assurance when you're on a call is one thing. I suppose the other way to take it, that's maybe the wise guy, the slightly more cynical way, is to say, hey lady, the bad guys have already got all your data. Do you want help or not? Now is not the time to have a discussion about this.
Well, the thing is too, like you called me. Why would I be trying to suddenly show up and steal information? You call me to help you, and I require this information, to help you. I mean, everyone in EMS goes through some sort of a background check, right? You can't have no one's a felon, right, until they are. You know what I mean?
No,
I mean, listen, I used to often wonder, like, what prevents people, all these EMS people out there, to access the information from date of birth, right, a social security number, the address, what prevents them from just opening up credit cards and all these patients' names? Some old lady, in a nursing home has no clue, right? What prevents people from just going around and doing that?
So that
Well,
go ahead.
it's
Yeah.
I just want to say it's trust, but a lot of the vulnerability it's not in the EMS people. It's not in the frontline responders or whoever you're dealing with, regardless of what the organization is. It's where they're sending it. It's the larger organization. Are they doing a good job? And also the third parties that they're doing business with. How good of a job are they doing? That's where the hacks are hacking, and that's in the business what we call the third party risk management, which is a whole huge topic. But that's where a lot of the risks are. Not so much the immediate person you're giving it to, or even the immediate organization you're giving it to, but the people they're using. How are they protecting it?
So
Sorry, Adam.
I'm sorry. So to address your things, your question about the EMT or the paramedic or the person on the front line. Yeah, it does happen, right? I'm not specifically talking about EMTs or paramedics. In every organization, there's something called insider threats. There's always that bad person that's going to take that information and open it. And exactly what Joe said, right? Joe's talking about more of the enterprise compromises and corruption. So there's two types of main compromises or issues we have to worry about. Of course, there's those one-offs and those cyber script kiddies that like to make a little bit money on the side. And there's a whole affiliate program. You can join a bigger crime syndicate and they give you 10% of what you get money-wise when you use their back end. It's really crazy. But the two
an affiliate? You mean an affiliate to do something bad?
Yes, no joke.
Yeah, criminal.
God.
It's a criminal
Enterprise.
Yeah.
There are people in other countries that have a 9-to-5 brick and mortar building. They have meetings and then they have people outside that, send ransomware and then they use their command and control back end and they get a certain percentage of the money that comes in. And it's, believe it or not, there's even help desks now. Oh, you got ransomware. I'm not making this up. Go ahead.
They have help desks. They have guarantees. There have been things where they've disclosed some of the internal communications. People complaining about their boss that they didn't get their bonus and everything. And it sounds like a regular company until you realize they're all criminals. It's crazy.
It's no joke. But the two big things that we worry about mostly is cyber criminal syndicates where they just want to make money and that's all they do. And then we worry about nation states, right? Nation states are those organizations, those countries, like we say China and Russia and other countries that specifically harvest personal information about us in order to use it against us or to do brute force password grabbing or other things. So there are countries out there that want to gather all the information they can about the U.S., whether they use TikTok or whether they compromise a hospital or they, there's a lot of things out there. And then there's a whole nother sexploitation thing, which I won't go into, that people send you these emails. I'm sure people have seen it, that they were recording you. So there's a lot of ways to make money and there's a lot of ways to scare people. And there's a lot of ways to get people to give up information kind of by duress. So it's crazy.
So just in general, I mean, I know we were kind of banging around the whole thing about data collection from patients and all, but for the people that maybe just joining us or people that don't have a clue, like when we take that information, we put it into that tough book or an iPad or whatever. Where does it go when you do that? Does it stay in the tablet? Is it going someplace directly then? Do you know? Or and how do they protect like that specifically? Is it just the same stuff everyone is using to protect that sort of electronic data, or is it something that's special for healthcare to protect that and to send it where it has to go?
Do you want me to jump in that?
You got to take this one, Adam. The more healthcare specific stuff.
I don't know specifically about each application, but your question is a little bit tricky, right? When you put a password or a username or data into anything, it stays in its cache, whether it's in the memory or on the hard drive. It might stay there temporarily, or it might be transmitted right away. But typically, any type of device that communicates back to a cloud, and I got to believe 99% of these applications are cloud-based, that information is encrypted end to end, kind of like your WhatsApp or your Signal, whatever texting you use. And that information is put on a server. Hopefully, that server's drives are encrypted. Hopefully, the access to those servers is limited only to people who need to get it. And hopefully, that information is transmitted to the other agencies, to an agency that's encrypted. Like Joe said, we always worry about third-party providers, because if you're transmitting the patient's information back to that EMR, or electronic medical record, or ACR, whatever you want to call it, I'm a little bit dated, then the billing company has to get that information. So that connection between that server and the billing company server, let's hope they're not compromised. And then from the billing company to the financial company that gets that money, let's hope they're not compromised. So it goes a lot of different ways. And I'm assuming also eventually, if it's a hospital, that individual has access to the EMR, electronic medical records, and they can see the diagnosis and everything. So there's a whole bunch of things that happen in that chain. But encryption, both in motion, which means between the sites, and encryption on disk, hopefully is there. And it should be as safe as possible, minus the vulnerabilities and 0 days.
So when you talk about like you said, third party stuff, so do you think it's safer overall for agencies to do everything in house? I work for a place that they did everything in house, dispatching, the bill collecting, the documentation, the processing of payments, all of that type of stuff. Is it safer for it to be in the third party, or to be all in house, or is it okay to kind of to separate it? Because I kind of look at it from both ways. Like if you have third parties handling it, right, and they break into one of those servers, they only get that information, versus if everything's in house and they break in, they get it all.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Joe,
well, it's interesting. For many years, even before the cloud was big, people would say, "Is it safer to do it yourself? To secure it yourself, or to outsource it, have someone else do it?" And the question often boils down to, well, how good are you at protecting the information? And very often the answer comes down to, proper security and strong security, especially for something as important as protected health information and financial data too, is expensive. It's very expensive. The people and the equipment and everything is quite expensive. And it is, as a general sort of rule, smaller organizations will have a much, much more difficult time being able to provide the level of security and to do it themselves versus a larger organization. Because if you have a larger organization, you have more money, but you also have more economies of scale. And you can afford the people, but if you're small, like you mentioned earlier, the agency that had everything running on a server, doing that very small scale is to provide everything and all the layers of protection that the big enterprises can provide is extremely difficult and extremely expensive, and often not realistic. So you kind of have to, and this happens throughout all industries too. You have to make this decision of, am I better off, doing it myself? Am I going to have the resources to do it, or should I just give it to someone else? But when you give it to someone else, you want to maintain a level of oversight, and that's that third-party risk management I was talking about. Hold their feet to the fire, make sure they're doing it right.
I know that I worked for a very small agency at one point, and I used to see the IT guy would show up, all the time. He's fixing the computers, updating stuff, and we used to always laugh in the crew room, like, "Oh, Christmas is coming. He's gonna make some money for for his presents, or the car payment's coming up. He's here putting a new server in, And we used to laugh at that. But again, it's almost like everything else in the world, right? It comes down to the cost, right? What's it going to cost? Like you said, a small agency can't really afford to, pay big money for just for IT. They have so many other expenses they have to pay, on a weekly, monthly basis. So I guess it comes down, to that. And then, like you said, they're forced to use third party stuff. But again, you make a good point that if agencies are using third parties to process stuff or to handle medical records or whatever, they should have some sort of an oversight to make sure that that third party is keeping up to date with everything, and that third party is communicating with them too what they're doing. I think
So check this.
that's a big issue too, right? That you have a third party and oh, they're handling all my billing for me, and they never send you an update that to kind of give you some sort of reassurance that oh, we just updated our servers and they're now encrypted with this software and that software. I mean, I get messages all the time that tell me, oh, we just updated this and now it's going to be better for you to use. You know what I mean? And I think some of these third party agencies don't communicate with with people, and then it goes back to that whole trust thing, right?
So yeah, so check this out, right? If you have one server, let's make a number up, $5,000. Then you have to have a high availability, another server, that's $5,000. Then you have to have a firewall, $5,000. I'm making these numbers up, but it's a minimum of that, right? Then you have to have then you have to have high availability, right? Great. That you have to have 2 circuits, right? Let's make it up, $5,000 per year for each circuit. So we're already at $25,000-$30,000. Wait, I'm in one location only. What happens if that building blows up? What happens if I get a leak? Oh, I need to be in another location. Now I got to lease another site. Then I have to have air conditioning. I have to have electricity. I have to have a rack. I have to have somebody maintain it. I have to do Windows updates. I have to make sure that when the hardware fails, I can change the hardware right away because I have to have somebody on call. When you have cloud, and I'm not saying cloud's the answer to everything, but cloud is one of those things that it's an unfortunate reality in the world. And all cloud means is somebody else's computer, right? But those organizations have cost to scale. They can maintain all that equipment cheaper because they have a lot more people buying their services. So cloud, unfortunately or fortunately, is the reality of saving a lot of money, but you're paying per minute or per hour or per month or per megabyte or per communication. So,
and the bottom line also is that there's the risk is always there, and there's no escape. If you move to the, like I say, if you go to third party providers, you need to maintain oversight. Hope they're doing well. If you go to the cloud, you need to know how to use the cloud correctly. And even the cloud can have issues. Just a month or two ago, Microsoft had yet another pretty major hack. Where they essentially, when not that it's easy, they have a complex infrastructure, but they get beat too.
Yeah.
So again, you need to be realistic about what you're capable of doing. What you're getting. The risk is not going to be perfect, and ultimately, I don't know how you do that in the EMS field, but we have ways of doing it in other fields. You need to be realistic with your customers and your constituents, and say, look, we are trustworthy. We're here to help you. We're here to do all this stuff. But, we don't have any magic in this that nobody else has. Just try to be realistic with them. And you do the best you can. It's like everything else. Like I tell my kids,
Well, what is there anything else you guys? I don't want to go on and boil and shed at people that might be in here. And all right, we get it, security, but do you have anything you think that you can kind of share that kind of relates to EMS and what the providers do, what agencies do, and how it relates to cybersecurity, and even stuff like with your freaking phone. You know what I mean? When people using their phones, anything you could think of that might be something that's maybe actionable that they can think about now that might help them. Like I said, that I got that message about that agency that lost all their stuff and they got hacked somehow. Is there any kind of actionable stuff they can do now? Is it hiring somebody like you guys to take care of it? Is it getting different software, or like you said, Adam, maybe putting things up in the cloud? Anything you can think of that might be actionable for them?
Do you want to go first, Joe, or you want me to go?
Well, I'll go first, and I'll kind of give the general things because I don't know the EMS field as well. But I would say for a lot of your people on the front lines and everything, your first responders, the first thing is if you do have your phones, if you're using your own devices, please keep them up to date. And we know, yes, you may brick it, as we say, because sometimes the updates are bad. But when Apple or Microsoft or some of these guys push out an update, it's often because it's not because they have nothing else to do. These things are being attacked. It's for real. So please protect yourself and update them. Understand some things may happen, but please do it. There's that. Use the things at your disposal, like the things that you can control yourself as an end user, like multi-factor authentication when it's available, like many other things. All try to use good passwords if there are passwords. Don't write them down on a piece of paper and carry it around in your pocket or anything. Things like that. And we talk about a lot of that on our show, and there's plenty of resources on that. So do that. But also, one of the biggest things you can do is be alert and be aware. And I know you guys have a lot of things to be aware of, and you have to be very alert. But one of the things we try to tell people is that, if you see something and it's a little weird and it looks like it's not right, it may be nothing, but in case there is something, I used to say when I was running a security group and getting these things, I would rather get 100 false alarms and tell people, no, it's okay, whatever, than for someone to just say, it's nothing, and move on. And even if you can't deal with it right away because you're obviously in the middle of something, please report it up. Tell the people who need to know what's going on, because that may be an important clue that can save a lot of hurt in the long run.
Yeah. So
it's funny. Before you talk, I want to just touch on that. You talk about the false alarm thing. That so is relatable to EMS, right? How many times do we get called to the same places and it's always BS, or we don't always take a blood pressure on a young guy. Oh, he's young. His blood pressure's gonna be fine. I don't have to worry about that. And then the time that you don't do it is a time that it becomes the issue, and then you're behind that 8 ball, right? So, what are your thoughts, Adam?
Well, it's funny you're bringing back these memories of visual vitals. So
on Dougie.
Yeah. Oh my God. So same things that Joe is saying, but let's keep in mind, right? Number one, don't use the same password on every single site, because if one site gets compromised and then your information gets harvested, somebody writes a script, takes all that information and starts logging into all these different sites. If you don't have multi-factor authentication, meaning you don't have a challenge, they send you a 6-digit code or whatever it is, someone's going to log in and buy some stuff at Best Buy or whatever else it is. I mean, I'm kind of being funny. I shouldn't say Best Buy. Another thing you should know is there's a website, and there's many websites. It's called, I'm getting it, haveibeenpwned.com, HAVEIBENPWNED.com. Have I been pwned? If you put your email address in there, and no one's harvesting it, at least I don't think so, it will tell you whether or not you've been compromised before, and their password is on the internet. It's not going to tell you the passwords. It's going to say, you've been compromised on blah, 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 blah. So that's evident that you should be very careful where you put your passwords.
But text me that link when you get a chance.
Yes, sir.
So I can put that in the show notes. So I think people might be interested in doing that. So text that to me and I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. So I'll do that. And then the other thing is, when you do that, when you have different passwords, question is, how do I manage that? My recommendation is to use a password manager. And there's some politics behind which password manager to use, but someone's like, if my password manager gets compromised, they have all my passwords. Well, it's better than having one password on every single site where someone runs a script. At least they have to run 10 million scripts for all the passwords.
Right.
And then the other thing
is those are encrypted anyway, right? A lot of those passwords,
they're encrypted, but some of them have been compromised before, and there's a whole politics about, should I use one? Should I use another one? Just be careful what you use, but manage your passwords. And then the other thing is, be very, very careful of what you get in emails. Some of them look so good, and they tell you in order to access this, you need to log in, and then use your Google account, use your whatever account. And then
now they're getting smart too, and now they don't used to be log into your bank or log into whatever. Now they go, or log into some kind of random ass website that you might have been to before, because they know, like you said, people use the same passwords and usernames, and then once they get that, then they can go to your bank and get all your stuff, right?
That's
I
right.
just use this to keep my passwords in here. I just unroll it and I have it all written out.
That's really good.
Carry that around with you. That'll work.
I keep my car in the back seat, and then on this side it says password do not open over here.
And then the other thing is, and people again, they take it for granted. Be extremely careful who you're speaking to on the phone. Hi, this is Chase. This is City.
Absolutely.
You just been compromised. I'm here to help you. No, you're not. I will hang up and call back the regular number I normally call.
Yes.
If you just be extremely, I don't even care if I've even had people call me from health plans. Hi, and they were legitimate. I'm like, no, I'm not talking to you. I'll call you. You're not calling me, because I can spoof a number very easily. I actually did it to somebody in our organization. Fred, I actually called him once with the spoof number of the office when it was closed. He wasn't happy about that. But the point I'm making is, just because it looks legitimate, most likely it's not. And even if it is legitimate, you have the power to make the phone call, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So
it's funny because my mother-in-law, she's constantly getting that, right? Calling her up, sending her links. Click this link for your package is going to get delivered. Click here to confirm. Should I click it? I'm like, no, don't click anything that you didn't request. I said to her, are you having a package coming? No. So why would you click it? But people don't realize. My stepdaughter, who's in her 20s, she got scammed. They called her up and she got scammed. They got into her bank account and stuff.
Well, here's something important to remember.
Oh, I know the AI, right?
And this was especially around the holidays. It's like, what's happening? You're getting a lot of packages. So those, a lot of people will say, they know they send it out to a million people. They know probably 700,000 of them are getting something from Amazon, from UPS to wait. So be very careful. Again, don't click the link. Go to that place's website or however else you can get into it another way and check it that way. That's really important.
You brought up a good point, Joe, also. So I can sample either one of your voices using AI, and I can call somebody with your voice and tell them, and if you know some personal information, I can make it seem like Joe's been kidnapped. I can use Joe's voice and say, help me. AI has really taken scams to the next level. And I'm sure Joe will elaborate on that.
Well, yes, there's the whole voice changing thing. There's the whole fake kidnapping call and all that we talked about a bit. I personally actually wanted to do, and I still do at one point. I think, Adam, we're going to do a show and I'm going to swap our voices with AI. I think that'll be hilarious personally. But
that sounds funny. I played around with the voice thing on AI. I can't really seem to get it right. But I'm not that deep into it just yet. So
it's a little tricky. It's not quite as easy.
They don't really have it as
one button as people think it is.
Right.
But it is powerful. And it is, and again, we talked about this in one of our episodes. It is frightening because a lot of our things, the ultimate test of identity is knowing someone, is knowing their voice, is knowing their face.
Yeah.
What's the fallback when we say, if you get a text message and you're not sure it's that person, well, call them. Now that's not trustworthy. That's incredibly scary. To tell the truth, it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Well, and I've had that conversation with my wife. We like to, if I'm not sure of something, and I've even had this with family members, I challenge them. Where did you take me in 6th grade where I told you I hate you? Stuff like that. Things that only certain people will know. I don't want to know your mother's maiden name. I don't want to know where you went to school. I want to know, when did you, punch me in the face? That's good. All right, let me know.
Right. And I gotta be careful, Adam. You're a podcaster now. You're an online celebrity, so you got to be careful. Someone tries to take your identity now.
Thanks for giving people
your followers. And, get in there.
Yeah.
All right, guys. When we end it there, just anything you want to close off with before we, end the show today?
No, I'll just say thanks a lot for having us, Jim. This has been a lot of fun. It's a new experience in two ways. We haven't done a live show, and and I've never been this sober at the end of a show either. So it's a little different for us.
Well, I'll leave you with this. I kicked. I'm in my bedroom and I have the camera blurred, and I had to kick my wife out of the bedroom in order to do this. So most likely, I'm going to be driving to Joe's house. I can no longer. My wife kicked me out of the house, so it's all good. But I really did appreciate the show, though.
Oh, great. I appreciate you guys coming on. I like to do stuff a little bit more than other EMS podcasts do with just talking about education or, how much money we're making and stuff like that, and kind of give different perspectives of different things and trying to branch out. That's my goal for 2024, is to get more people on like you guys to talk about this type of stuff, and especially like providers who have other passions besides EMS and how I can relate that to what we do, in EMS. So I really appreciate you guys coming on. Of course, any links that I talked about today, including Joe and Adam's podcast, will be in the show notes. The link Adam had mentioned before, and of course, all their social media profile stuff. So I encourage everybody to go ahead and follow them on social media. Go check out their podcasts. As you can tell, they're not the boring IT guys that are going to drone on about stuff. They get a little bit of personality in there to make it interesting when you're listening to this stuff, and come away with some information, that might help you in your day-to-day as well. So, guys, thanks so much. Everyone, of course, be sure to like the show, visit the show at emsofficehours.com, and share it with your friends and neighbors and lovers. All right. This is, guys,
All
as
right.
always, I
Thank
am
you.
Jim Hoffman from emsofficehours.com. Stay